one day the government will come and it will affect you. So you have to understand that building relationships with people in government is the key. So if you have a relationship with, your elected representative, especially in local, state assembly, state senate seats, these are the people that make the laws that are really going to affect your small business immediate impact, right? Yes, there's federal things that affect it, but these local state elections are very, very important. So just building a relationship with those type of people. So once I saw what they were trying to do, we were shut down. They cut off our access for about a year and a half. So it wasn't like it just happened from one day to the next and we stopped it. No, we were in real big trouble for about a year and a half. So during that year and a half, I built relationships with elected representatives.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Entrepreneurs are some of the most impressive people around. They see a problem that most of us just complain about, and instead of whining or ignoring it, they come up with a solution. Take the DMV, for example. Let's be honest, when you find out it's time to renew your tags, register your car, or deal with anything DMV related, how does that make you feel? For most of us, it's one of those errands we put off, as long as we can. The long lines, the confusing paperwork, part of your day's gone. It's just not fun. But what if someone took the hassle completely off your hands? Well, today's guest figured out, just how to do that, at least if you live in Las Vegas. He already had a business doing emissions testing, which is required yearly in Nevada, and thought, let's combine these two services. So, of course, offering the service didn't come without its own roadblocks. He ran into some challenges, and we are going to talk to him about that today. I want to welcome Rafael Arroyo to the podcast to share his story with you all. Thanks, Rafael. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being with us. And, before we get talking about your business, I wanted to, my understanding is you came here from Puerto Rico when you were 6. So how did your parents pick Las Vegas, and what was it like to grow up there?
Well, it was, obviously a lot of people that don't live here have this, like, the Strip is the only thing that exists here in Las Vegas, but it's not the case. It's very, suburbia, Western suburbia. It was what it was. And we actually, my mom and dad wanted to go to San Diego, and that was in the early 90s, but it was just too expensive. That was just the bottom, even then. Right. It was just too expensive. So they said, well, I had an uncle that was out in San Diego. They were trying to get there, but it was too expensive. So I said, well, Las Vegas is pretty close. It's a 4 or 5 hour drive. And, it seems like it's a little bit more affordable. And that's how we ended up here.
Nice. Well, and I imagine, it's really boomed in the time you've been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's 10x'd in population easily. I think when I got here it was like 180,000 people or something. We're up over 2.5 million now. So it's definitely boomed big time.
Well, good place to start a business then. Maybe tell me a little bit of your story. So my understanding is that you started working for someone else who did emissions testing. How'd you find that job? And then, what did it lead to?
It was, I was working retail and I was doing pretty well, sales, things like that when I was young. And I had a friend whose father owned some emissions testing stations, and he was like, who's looking for some help. And my friend told me about it. He's like, hey, the job's, it's easy. It pays well. You just got to get this license. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I did that, and it was great. It was a great job for me as a young person. It allowed me to do a lot of self development. I read a lot of books, I watched a lot of documentaries, things like that, because you have a lot of extra time on your hands. You just kind of wait for the people to come. And so I was able to use that time to learn a lot. And eventually I just said, this is not that difficult. I think I could do this myself. And every day I would drive by to go to work, and there was a business that said, DMV registration services. And so I kept driving by that place, and I was like, people do emissions testing for registration purposes. Like that's the whole reason you do it.
Right.
So why doesn't anybody do both things at the same time? And that's what I did. I saved my money and, found a spot and bought a machine and started.
So a lot of places around the country don't require emissions testing. I happen to, unfortunately, live in the Chicago area where we absolutely do, and it is a giant pain in the neck. So what's the rule there, or the law there in?
Yeah, so
Nevada?
here in Las Vegas, in Nevada, there's only two counties that require emissions testing. So, Clark County here in Las Vegas is one of them, and then there's one in Washoe County up north in Reno area. But here it's actually really necessary. There's no rain, barely, right? We're in the middle of the desert. And so what happens is the emissions, they kind of pool up in the valley, and you can really see the smog kind of pool up. And it's actually a surprising thing, because of the emissions program here in Las Vegas, the air quality is actually better today than it was in the 70s. Because
So
that's how dirty
people.
cars were back then. Yeah.
So you decided to open your own business. What was that like when it started? Like, what was the startup and, the hump you had to get over?
Save some capital, and then you start learning how to, I was 23, and I learned how complex government is. I mean, you got to get, the Secretary of State business license, then you got to get the jurisdictional business license, and then you have to get the occupational business license from the DMV. Like, there were so many different things and hurdles to jump through, Department of Taxation, like all these different things. I can see why it's intimidating for people. Luckily, the people, especially at the Department of Taxation, were really nice, and somebody kind of helped me through that. But now there's a lot of resources now. There's the Chambers of Commerce. I didn't even know what a Chamber of Commerce was back then. So there's the Chambers of Commerce that will help. But now even the Secretary of State has a great kind of step-by-step process on how to start a business, which is, a life changer for a lot of people, because it's a really big hurdle. So many things to clear before you can actually open your doors.
Yeah, I think that's so true. As a former small business owner, I was shocked at how much of the startup and like just the hoop jumping, I'd kind of call it, like you had to do in order to go and do what you were trying to make money doing. And it really was, it's hard to balance, especially at the beginning. So at one point, you ended up being told your business was illegal. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it was, after I was open for a few months, and a detective. So they have a department within the DMV called Compliance Enforcement. And they came down and said, hey, detective came in and said, hey, what you're doing is illegal. And I asked why. And they said, because it was false advertising or something. And I said, I don't think so. Could you show me where that says that in the law? And it was really interesting because it was no one had ever done it before. Nobody had ever combined those two businesses into one. I was the first person to do it. And so people are afraid of things they don't understand or new things, and government especially. And so when we went back and forth and I asked them to show me where it says I can't do that, there was no place that said that, because it didn't exist. There was no laws about an industry that did not exist. So we went back and forth for a while, and eventually he said, you know what, you're right. You can do this, and it's not a big deal. Very interesting.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think that's a pretty great example of, properly standing up to authority. You know what I mean? Like, it's proper for us to question authority, and especially if we think that they're wrong. You do it respectfully, of course. And it sounded like you had a good conversation with the detective and helped him realize like maybe he wasn't right in that case. But my understanding is the DMV started to make it harder and harder for you to operate. Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100%. So as the valley grew, right? So we're up to 2 million people, but we only have 4 DMV offices in the entire valley in Las Vegas. So imagine 4 DMV offices, 1 million people, then 2 million people, and 2 million people. And so the idea, and this happens a lot in government, the idea is we're the government, we can fix it. Just give us money. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what they were aiming for. And it obviously wasn't working because our industry just kept growing, but they would, put roadblocks and say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. And eventually they actually tried to, this was in 2018, they actually tried to shut us down, like legitimately try to shut the industry down. And they cut our access in half. And we had to organize as an industry. Small business owners had to get together, figure out the political process, which is a whole another animal to deal with. So you have to figure out the political process, try to find a politician that can help you, try to figure out, what is a lobbyist? What do they do? Are they good? Are they bad? Things like this. And to really understand, and we had to fight it, and we did, and we were successful, and we won, and we were able to get that access back that we lost, and because of that, the industry, continued to grow, doubled, tripled in size, and now it's I think there's over 150 of these businesses here in the Las Vegas Valley.
Oh, wow. What a great example of, number one, government trying to crush its competition, which is just wrong. But then private industry recognizing a gap and a need in the market and going and filling that. Because you're totally right. 4 offices to service, 2 million people is insane. What a great example of industry or business stepping in. But you took that, kind of that step, banding together with your colleagues and started working on a bill. So what was that legislation like? What was that process like? And, how has it benefited you and others?
Yeah, that was an insane process. So basically, right, and this is the thing, people have to understand the government and business, they solve problems in 2 different ways. And it's very difficult for people that are in the public sector to understand, in my opinion, efficiency. Okay. And how, we want to solve the problem, because as an entrepreneur, if you're solving a problem for someone, they're going to pay you to solve that problem. That's where your value comes from. But when you're the government, there's no real accountability to performing this task. Right. And so what happened was we proposed a bill to say, look, you guys don't really want to deal with us, so let us process these transactions in-house, like in our own businesses. And there's multiple states that do this, and these states don't have a DMV problem because of that. But they were very, very, very reluctant to do so. And it was a huge battle back and forth. And basically, the government will, they will say, oh, this is way too expensive. It's going to cost you millions of dollars for us to pass this law. And that's how they actually kill it. But then they turn around and ask for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to solve the exact same problem, which is what happened. But luckily, we had a very good legislator that was sponsoring our bill. And so even though we actually couldn't pass that, we never got to be able to pass that legislation. We were able to, strike a deal and pass legislation to protect the industry from being shut down, to guarantee this access for these small businesses. And that's what we were able to do. But it was definitely a nail biter, down to the last day of the last, committee hearing where these bills have to pass out of there. And it was right down to the wire, but we were able to get it done, which was a miracle in itself. And because of that, like I said, so many jobs were created. So many people got their DMV problem solved, right? Because you double or triple the amount of businesses in this industry. That means tens and even hundreds of thousands of people that we service, got that stuff done. And the state of Nevada got their tax revenue faster because we exist. So it was a win-win for everybody except the people in the DMV that did not want us to succeed.
Well, so I imagine when you started working either retail or at the emissions business, that you probably didn't ever think that you would be involved in working on legislation and lobbying on it. What was your mindset, or what were your thoughts as you kind of were in that process? Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, well, I think what people have to realize is that it doesn't matter if it's, the director of the DMV, somebody in a, if it's a detective, if it's, some regulatory agency, they're human beings. All right. They're human beings. They're people just like us. They have rules that they have to follow, and there's a process. And you don't have to just appeal to authority every time they tell you to do something. And I've never been that person, right? I started my own business because I'm not a follower, and I wasn't just going to lay down. There was a lot of people that laid down. They just said, well, I mean, this is what it is. We'll just adjust. And that's not what you do. You have to push back. And you'll be surprised how much you can get accomplished just by pushing back, especially when you're right. There was no real reason for them. We had all of the statistics were in our favor. We increase efficiency at the DMV. We process transactions so much faster for them. We provide customer service to, clients at no charge to the state. So I knew in principle I was correct. And I wasn't just going to let that happen. And everything that I built, I wasn't just going to let some person, because they woke up and said, we don't want you here, to shut an industry down. And I also felt the pressure of others who maybe didn't understand government or weren't willing to do the research because they were intimidated by the whole process. So, I saw that and I said, well, I'm not going to let these guys get shut down either. And so we stood up and we fought and we got it done. But it was never in my plans. I never dreamed that's what I would be doing, but that's what you got to do. You have to fight when you think something is wrong.
Yeah. We're, as an organization, we've been talking about a campaign that we've launched called the One Small Step campaign. And the essence of it is that people, like everyday people throughout our history, going back to the founding fathers, kind of took one action or one small step to try to, increase, to make their communities better, or to, increase freedom and liberty or opportunity for people. And, in your case, it's like, hey, I see a threat to our business here. We're providing a great service that makes government work better and certainly helps the people more and helps small business owners. And you took, you had the courage to kind of go out there and try to battle and, take your step to preserve your business and make it a better, just make the situation better. So I give a lot of credit for that. Any advice for someone who finds himself in a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand the process, right? That's the hardest thing, is understand the process. The next thing is, it doesn't matter what type of business you're in, the government will affect you at, one way or another. One day the government will come and they will affect you. So you have to understand that building relationships with people in government is the key. So if you have a relationship with, your elected representative, especially in local, state assembly, state senate seats, I mean, these are the people that make the laws that are really going to affect your small business immediate impact, right? Yes, there's federal things that affect it, but these local state elections are very, very important. So just building a relationship with those type of people. So once I saw what they were trying to do, we were shut down. They cut off our access for about a year and a half. So It wasn't like it just happened from one day to the next and we stopped it. No, we were in real big trouble for about a year and a half. So during that year and a half, I built relationships with elected representatives, kept explaining the story, started learning the process. And that is what was able to get the foot in the door to have our issue represented, up there in the legislature. And that's what happened. So I would advise people, you need to get involved with just building the relationships with your local representatives, because those are the people that are going to go to bat for you when the time comes. If you never talk to them and you never say anything, and then when the problem arises, that's when you start, it's a lot more difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's a lot more difficult than if you say, hey, I have this problem, and then you work on it for a year, and then legislative session comes or whenever, depending on your state, then you can start working the problem politically.
That's great advice. I mean, my background is in politics and government, so it's kind of second nature to me to be like, well, we build relationships with elected officials, but I know most people don't. And I think people overestimate the hurdle of getting to know your elected representatives. I mean, certainly a assembly member or a state senator, a lot of them want to know business owners. They want to know folks who are creating jobs and employing people in their district, or they just want to know their constituents. So, not everybody has an open door, but most should and most do, and they're interested in hearing your story and being helpful. Some have different motivations, but for the most part, it isn't that high of a hurdle to try to get to know them. It just takes the effort and the intentionality. And I think you're so right. When you need those relationships, when a situation arises that you need those relationships, they're very valuable, and they should be your advocate. So, Rafael, what's the future for your business? And like from a legislative standpoint, I mean, do you see more regulation or any threats in the future?
And that's the other thing. The fight never stopped. It's continued. So we're in 2025. It's been 7 years, and it's constant threats back and forth. And this happens when you get people in government and they turn it from let's help our constituents, the people in the state of Nevada that need, DMV work done. They turn it from that into a personal vendetta. And that's really kind of what it's become. And it's unfortunate. And we just tried again this year to try to get legislation passed. And it was kind of the same process. And so it's a battle. It doesn't stop sometimes. Sometimes you win a battle, but the war continues, and that's kind of what it is. And so we continue to fight. We were unsuccessful in this legislative session. We were able to kind of push back their plans another 2 years. There'll be another legislative session, and you got to continue, because what happens is people in these big government agencies, they want to be the ones to solve the problem, which is fine. I support solving problems. The issue is I don't support solving problems when it costs a taxpayer $400 million. And that's what's happening here, specifically in Nevada, is they're just shoveling money to the DMV to try to upgrade their computer system and make everything automated. And it would just be 10x cheaper to just allow us and license us to process these transactions in-house. But when you have people that, are really fighting against that, then it's difficult. And that's what it is. So the future is the battle continues.
Well, keep up the good fight. I mean, unfortunately, we see this at the federal level all the time, too, that sometimes government's goal becomes preserving and growing government, kind of protecting what's theirs. And, but, if private business can do a better job, or even as good a job, offering a service, we should totally want that. That makes us such a better and healthier country. But not everybody sees it that way, and unfortunately, you're running up against entrenched interests. They're trying to keep their share of the pie and probably grow it. So good luck to you, and keep up the fight. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Thank you for the opportunity. And it was great. And I hope this inspires people to understand that you can fight back. I think that One Small Step campaign is a great way to try to convey to people. All it takes is one small step, one person stepping up and saying, no, that's what I did. And I was able through that to inspire some people to join. And that way we were able to fight as a collective group and get some victories. And I'm still in business, so still winning.
That's great. I hope it keeps growing. So we need more Rafaels around the country, and we'll have a better country for it. So thanks again.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that.
Folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.